we are going to dispel like one of the biggest, well, maybe not the biggest, that's a little dramatic, but it's fun to be dramatic once in a while. I'm going to dispel one of the statements out there that every single one of us have said at one point in our life, and it's not based on truth. And it is what it is. And I'm here to do everything I can to empower you so that you can step into your greatness and really understand what this thing called life is all about, right? Like we've all heard this saying or said this saying. I know I've said it many, many times because I didn't know any different. And that is perception is reality. Perception is reality. My friends, it's not. It's reality for the person that has the perception, but there's one reality and almost 8 billion perceptions or perspectives about that reality. And so we want to really unfold and unlock and get into a little more specifics on what creates our perception, right? Because perspective is an individual thing. And the more we understand this, like when I was, let's see, when I was early in my corporate career, we'll just put it that way. I got out, thank you. But back in my corporate career days, I had a massive, massive breakthrough one day. And I was working on managing this jewelry store and doing everything I could to make sure that we were all in a line and making things happen and making things like that happen and getting all of the people incongruent with what it is that I wanted to create. Obviously, we have opportunities to be able to empower other salespeople. And the way we were doing that was getting them to do certain techniques that I had been trained as a manager. And I had this massive breakthrough one day. Now, some people get this sooner than I do. And that's what's really important about understanding this. I look back and I chuckle because what causes more pain than anything? This is the thing that causes more pain than anything in this world. And that is naivety. Naivety, right? And so here I am early in my corporate career, and I recognized, wow, nobody else thinks like I do. Nobody else thinks like I do. And so what was happening, I was getting frustrated because nobody else understood how I thought. And I just took for granted and made the assumption that everybody else thought like I did. And of course, if that was the way this world worked, good Lord, we would have lots of issues. I don't want everybody to think like I do. Right. And so you understanding that you are the only person that thinks like you do, right? You are the only person that sees the world the way you do. Nobody else sees it like you, right? So you being able to embrace that, right? Because that is really, really an opportunity for you to understand that you live in a unique world. And the cool thing about that and the opportunity for you is that you get to express how you see this thing called reality, right? Because understand, so first of all, our subconscious is interpreting about 10 million bits of information every second. Approximately, I've heard lots of different numbers around that, but I just like to say about 10 million bits of information coming at you every second. So if I do the math correctly, I think that is about 100 gig coming at you every second. Okay. And so that means that think about that 10 gigs of information that comes at you every second. And your conscious mind is processing about 40 bits of information every second. So you're losing tons of information. So how does that happen? Well, one way it happens is we run all this data through our senses, right? Like we have our 5 senses: sight, smell, sound, taste, touch. These are all senses that break down that information. And this is what we are interpreting, and this is what we believe is reality, right? And then we have all of our internal programs. Then we have all of our archetypes. We have decisions that we've made. We have beliefs that we have created. We have emotions and mental constructs and things like that that determine what it is that we see. So case in point, your mind literally deletes information. So you might think that I'm crazy. That's cool. I would embrace that fact that if you think I'm crazy, because I can be absolutely bona fide crazy and I love my crazy. that your mind will literally delete information. So case in point, have you ever been looking for a set of keys, like looked everywhere, and you're getting frustrated and you enroll everybody in the house to support you in finding these keys, right? And someone comes up to you and says, they're right here. And you're like, where did you find those keys at? And you're like, they were right here. And you looked there how many times, right? The reason you weren't able to see those keys was literally your mind was deleting the information, because the image of where those keys were at did not match the image you had in your head. Let me repeat that. What you were seeing where those keys were at was being deleted because it did not match the image in your head. So give you another perspective on this. So I've got thousands of books, okay? And when I'm doing research, or I want to pull something else up or study a book or something like that, and I start looking for that book and I'm not able to find it, and I have them somewhat organized. I mean, I'm not a librarian by any stretch of the imagination, or organized it that way, but I can tell that the image that I have in my head is probably not what the book really looks like. So I'll get on Amazon, I'll look it up and see the book that I ordered and find out that it's not really what I thought it looked like, or remember it correctly. But as soon as I have the correct image, I'm able to find that book. Again, because I understand this, like my mind is going to delete information if it does not match what is in my head. So I have to reset the image in my head to match what is it that I'm actually looking for, right? So here's another case in point. So I've had Dobermans. I love Dobermans. Dobermans are like the most amazing dogs in the world, okay? And sad to say that I lost my boy here back in August. Shattered me. I was shattered. Amazing dog. And I have been walking that dog down the sidewalk, and I've had women take their boyfriends and put them in between the dog as I pass them on the sidewalk. She has a much different perception of a Doberman than I do, right? Again, it's not based on reality because my dog loves people, loves people. Now I get it. So what we're doing is we take our history and we project it into our future. And that's what we believe, what we are really seeing. So I've had this happen many times. When I first came out to California, I had a really interesting experience. Never really had the experience of someone being racial. Well, I don't know if it'd be considered racial prejudice. It was definitely prejudice. Where I came into a gas station and they said, we would recommend that you leave like promptly, like get out of here for your own safety of your own life. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And he's like, dude, they don't like people like you around here. And what he thought I was a white supremacist. Now, this was back before shaving your head was in vogue. This was 25 years ago, 25 years ago. And they thought someone with a shaved head that's a white guy, Caucasian guy, is a white supremacist, right? So what they did is they projected what they perceived me to be onto me, right? Really, really, really important. And the other part that's really, really important about this, and I would encourage all of you to look this up, is Heidenberg's uncertainty principle, is we can literally change people by how we perceive them. So let me expand on this a little bit more. This is advanced, like really, really advanced training. And if you guys want to check out more of learning how to step into your mastery and master every domain of your life, then you definitely want to check out the workshop that I'm doing at masteringpotential.com, the workshop that I'm going to be doing soon. You do not want to miss that. I'm doing my life's work in that workshop, and you will be glad that you were part of it, because it's amazing some of the things that have happened over there. But if you hold somebody in a certain space, so case in point, like I'm a motorcycle rider, like I've walked into cafes out in the middle of nowhere back in Minnesota. Yes, I'm from North Dakota. Lived in North Dakota a long time. I'm actually from Utah, but that's where I get this question like you're back from the Midwest. Yeah, I lived in North Dakota for a long time. But a number of us friends were out riding motorcycles. We're all dressed in leather. And I'm, fairly good sized guy, 6'2", a little over 200 pounds. And we all walk into this cafe, and within being there 10 minutes, that whole cafe left, right? Because what they did is they projected their perception of what they thought motorcycle riders were, like outlaws and criminals and hellraisers, and they didn't want any part of it, so they left, right? But see, when we hold somebody in that space, we characterize somebody, not only characterize somebody, but we characterize an experience. We have to hold ourselves in that. Like if I walk up to a guy that's in leather, tattooed, beard, all, I've just been around bikers enough to know that this isn't really how I'd show up anymore, because bikers are amazing. Some of them are like, we got big toy runs out here. There's hundreds and hundreds of motorcycles that support Make a Wish Foundation, right? But seeing people like that, and we see all the stuff on TV, like all the motorcycle gangs and all of that, and that's the only relationship that we have with understanding what a biker is like. We see that biker that way, we will characterize this person that certain way, and we will show up with the vibration from defensive of being scared and holding that person that way, right? So that's going to impact them and how they show up as well. I got a PhD in, no, well, not literally a PhD, but I've got enough mastery in this to understand that I used to carry myself in a very cold, distant, non-emotional, well, very in fact, I had an experience once. This is really when I started really looking at how I was showing up. Is I had this friend of mine, sweet lady, sweet elderly lady, and she was introducing me to one of her friends, and she says, Jeff is really a sweetheart, don't let, I mean, he doesn't bite. I was like, wow, am I showing up that way that makes people think that I'm going to bite them? So ask yourself, and I would really encourage you to ask some people in your life that are going to give you authentic feedback, because I had created relationships in a way that would not give me the authentic feedback because they were a little bit hesitant because of how I showed up. But as time has gone on, I've been able to create relationships that give me authentic feedback, where you ask people, how do I show up? Like, how do people really see me? Because, see, friends, we can't see ourselves in the picture, right? Alls we can see is the feedback that we get from other people. So if we start asking ourselves, how am I creating these experiences with people? Then we can start going, well, what kind of experiences do I want to create? Because your perception is not reality. Yes, absolutely, there are components of it, right? But see, it is, experience itself is neutral. We are the ones that narrate what that experience really is. And how we narrate that is based off our programs, based off our assumptions, our judgments, our loops, our archetypes, all these different things. Just taking masculine and feminine. And masculine and feminine is not based on gender, by the way. But just taking masculine and feminine, they see things on 180 difference, right? Masculine is all about creating and nurturing, having empathy, right? Masculine is all about doing and protecting and providing and conquering and all these different components as well. So they see, hear, and feel completely different. One's testosterone, if you look at it from a gender standpoint, one's testosterone, one is estrogen, right? So there's lots of different things that add to this component of having perspective. Our life, our life is a reflection of us. We live in a house of mirrors. So everything that you see and perceive is a reflection of you. You are the one that is narrating this perspective that you have of life, right? So how does it serve you to judge people? Now, most people don't even like to admit that they do it, right? But judgment is actually a survival mechanism that we use. It's actually to protect ourselves, right? Like, how much of your life, well, let me ask you this. How does your perspective serve you? Like, that would be a great question to start out with. How does your perspective serve you? And then how does it change according to who you're hanging out with, right? Like, if you go into your family, you have a certain perspective. If you go into unknown areas, your perspective starts changing, because some of us have had issues, some of us have had experiences where we've been traumatized, right? So we're going to do everything we can to protect re-experiencing that humiliation, right? And so our mind is constantly scanning to see what to pay attention to, right? And so understanding this, right, is that perception is not reality. And the things that irritate you can literally be your greatest teacher. Now, I teach this, and there are days all the time when I have to remind myself of this, right? Like, what is this irritating me? What have I decided this to mean that is causing me irritation? Like, I was raised in a family that driving down the highway, everybody was supposed to part like the Red Sea so that we could drive through and not have anybody irritate that, right? And so, yeah, that's the whole thing. And one day I'm driving down the road, and this guy cuts in front of me or whatever, does stuff that like I do all the time, and I got really upset, and I said, "How? Why is it so important for me to get upset? This guy doesn't even know that I'm upset, can't hear me, and I'm yelling at him, right? Like, how ridiculous is that?" Right? But that is based on how I've been conditioned, right? Not blaming anybody. It just is what it is, right? Like thinking about everything has been energy and vibration. I used to sit in cars and feel that energy and vibration with an environment with people yelling at other drivers, right? So that's a conditioned response for me. See, and really, when we get angry, it's nothing more than we're afraid of being hurt, right? So that's what we do. We use anger as a protective mechanism, right? So our assumptions, our judgments, our prejudices, our ego, all these different components really play into filtering the data of what creates this thing called a perspective, right? So, how is your perspective serving you? Is this perspective giving you what it is that you want to create? Like if you get hurt by a woman, is your perspective is that all women are this way. The other thing that I would encourage you to believe, and I just did a reel on this, is we have been conditioned by this. The society has been conditioned to look through the eyes of duality, right? Which is you choose either or, black or white, Republican or Democrat, in or out, right? We have been conditioned to believe this. And the reason, well, I'm not going to get into the reasons of why, but it removes choice. It's a forced choice, right? You choose this or that. And that is not reality, right? You have lots and lots and lots of choices. But see, because we've been conditioned to have a certain relationship with authority, it limits us to believe they're the ones that are determining what we choose, right? Like when you put somebody, and I do this coaching, right? Like there's some context, and what it does is it gets you to see which one you access the quickest, right? Like I'm interested in seeing how people think, and I have to ask forced choice questions sometimes to get them to see what is the template of what it is that they're accessing and how they think, right? So when somebody asks you, do you want this house or that house? Understand this is what they're doing. They're trying to narrow you down into making a choice. We have unlimited choices. We have unlimited choices. But see, again, it's understanding that the words are not the item or the experience that they represent. So taking stuff literal is a very limited level of understanding. And so you are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions, you are your awareness. And so understanding you are not your perspective, and understand that everybody, like if somebody was standing on, if you're at an intersection, each person on each corner would have a completely different experience. The other part is what state are you in, right? Like what state of resourcefulness are you in? You go into the grocery store, you're hungry, you have a much different perspective on going into that grocery store than when you go in there and you're full, right? So there's lots of things that are contributing to how you see your world, right? So I'd encourage you to be as neutral as possible, be as objective as possible, be in a resourceful state, and always question, what else can this mean, right? And the other part is when we are irritated, this is our greatest, excuse me, the things that irritate us the most about people are things that remind us of who we are. So when you are irritated by somebody, ask yourself the question, how do I do this? And when do I do this? And do I do this? And so looking at this, because the more you embrace your own humanity, the more you're going to extend it to other people. Right. So really understand perspective is not reality, right? It's an illusion that we create on ourselves, and how our lives is what we perceive as a house of mirrors. It's just reflecting life back to us, right? That's why I said there's almost 8 billion perceptions in this world and one reality. So do what you can to step and being as neutral as possible, raise your vibrations, be in a higher resourceful state, get feedback all the time, right? Like experience itself as neutral. and how is it serving you coming up with the perspective that you're creating. And if you want a different perspective, what it is that you want to create, and get intentional about creating that perspective, right? So appreciate you being here. And by all means, get over to the potentialzonegroup.com. We're having amazing things going on over there. And the group is growing really, really quick. A lot of amazing posts are being on in there. And we had a lot of feedback and a lot of interesting things going on. I'd love to have you be a part of it. And also, if you would like to master potential in all areas of your life, then you definitely want to check out my Mastering Potential workshop by going to masteringpotential.com. So I appreciate your time for being here, friend. Appreciate all the comments. Love seeing each and every one of you, and have a great evening. And as always, live like your life depends on it, because it does, my friend. Be blessed. Have a great evening. Take care.